That coverage, though, right now, obviously a huge story, not only today, but in recent weeks as well. And right now, we want to focus and turn your attention to the University of Texas at Austin. Violent clashes between police and protesters captured on video, including one moment. Many of you might remember this, including when a Fox 7 Austin photographer, his name Carlos Sanchez, was thrown to the ground and arrested. To talk more about what happened, we want to bring in our next guest here. We have Ashanti Blaize-Hopkins joining us here. She is the president of the Society of Professional Journalists, and she joins us here now. Ashanti, thanks so much for your time. We certainly appreciate you coming on to talk more about this. Obviously, a very jarring video there. You tweeted earlier today that the charges against the photographer have been dropped. What sort of charges was he facing, and what did the SPJ do on his behalf?
Well, the charges that he was facing was felony assault of a peace officer. And what was really kind of strange about this whole situation is initially when he was arrested at the protest, he was charged with criminal trespass. And then those charges were dropped as he was released from jail the following morning. And so it wasn't until DPS sent out a statement the following morning, basically insinuating that Carlos Sanchez had hit a DPS trooper while covering this protest at UT Austin, and that they were going to do an investigation into that particular claim. And so SPJ, we acted quickly and swiftly to really call out this heinous, statement that they had made, insinuating that this journalist did anything but his constitutionally protected job. And so we tried to really keep the heat on. We were in contact with both state and congressional officials and legislators to see how we could use that leverage to be able to get to DPS and see how we could get these charges dropped. So, I'm hoping that the advocacy that we did on our end helped to kind of really tamp down what was happening in the situation. We feel like this was a huge escalation, and not only that, really intimidation and retaliation for the press covering this very highly publicized situation.
Yeah, and how would you describe that overall channel of communication? Do you feel like your message obviously was received, knowing that these charges have been dropped? And also, if you can give us an update on Carlos, how is he feeling?
Well, I haven't spoken directly to Carlos, so I don't want to speak for him. I've spoken to some of his colleagues, who say that he is back at work, but I can only imagine that this had to have been quite a harrowing experience. Imagine going to your job, doing your work, and being tackled by a DPS trooper while trying to do your constitutionally protected job. I mean, he was there to cover the story. He was there to keep the people informed. And then he was arrested in the process of trying to do that. And in addition, not only was he arrested and prevented from actually getting the information out to the people, this really created a chilling effect to journalists across the state of Texas who will undoubtedly have to cover this story that will likely not be going away anytime soon. So this is something that we are keeping a close eye on. We pulled together a coalition of journalism organizations and First Amendment advocacy groups to bring forth a joint statement condemning the Texas Department of Public Safety for the actions that they have taken and the escalation of the situation. And we're hoping that we don't see these charges refiled.
And Ashanti, I want to pull up a tweet here as well where you were quoted here calling the actions of police that day a dangerous escalation by the Texas Department of Public Safety. You also said that it seems the agency is trying to send a message to journalists across Texas. What message is that?
Well, I think the message that they're trying to send is, we don't want you covering these types of stories and making us look bad. And to be honest with you, part of our job as journalists is to hold agencies to account, especially federal and state agencies. Our job is to be the eyes and ears of the public who cannot be there. Our job is to keep the public informed. And so if law enforcement is in any way infringing on that right and interfering on our ability to do that, that is a problem, not just for journalists, but for the general public, and making sure that they can stay informed about what's happening on the ground.
And moving on just from UT Austin as well, we've obviously seen these protests pop up all across the country and around the world. How would you describe policing at some of these other universities as well? And is your organization aware of maybe any other journalists who have been found in similar positions or have felt targeted?
So we are recognizing that there was one incident in California at Cal Poly Humboldt where a journalist was detained, not arrested, not charged, but definitely detained. And that is concerning just because, again, you have a situation where a journalist was stopped from being able to do their constitutionally protected job of keeping the public informed. And that is something that we just can't have law enforcement do in general. We are not, the journalists in general are not adversaries to law enforcement. They have a job to do, but so do we. And we expect them to allow us to do their job, our job, just like they expect us to allow them to do theirs. So, we can work together to make sure that each of us is able to do what we need to do when we're on those types of scenes.
And Ashanti, we really appreciate you coming on here with us to talk more about this incident, and as well as Carlos and how he's doing today. Do you have any final thoughts here? Anything else that you would like to share with our viewers, whether it be about journalists being on the front lines covering these events, or anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, I just think it's really important for the public to understand that a lot of times journalists are putting themselves in harm's way just to make sure that the public remains informed. And without an informed public, that is a detriment to our very democracy. So you have journalists out there on a daily basis fighting for your right to remain in a democracy and fighting for your right to keep informed. You can't be there, so we are. And that's really what we're fighting for.
President of the Society of Professional Journalists, Ashanti Blaize-Hopkins, joining us live here. Ashanti, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Lexi.